Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Molecules to Market by ResourceWise. I'm your host, Steve Wilkerson. Now, there's no need to beat around the bush. This episode is going to be about the Iranian conflict. The United States' position was that Iran's nuclear capabilities were increasing very rapidly and that it was a now or never situation. And so, because of that, uh, we've covered in another article that I wrote last week, which was about the Strait of Hormuz and how things are going to transpire with that strait. The strait is essentially every is the last stand for Iran, right? Everything else has gone wrong. The U.S. is strategically striking missile silos and continually finding strategic targets. Now, currently, uh, at the time of this recording, oil has just hit $114 per barrel, and that's Brent. That represents a 24% increase in just a matter of days. Now, this was something that we all have anticipated. And when we look at that article that I wrote last week, where we talk about the insurance premiums that are going to have to be issued in order for traffic to begin flowing again in that Hormuz Strait. Now, a couple things are involved with that. One is I need everybody to imagine a gap, right? Which, I saw a visualization online, which was very powerful, where when those shipments, the ones that are actually traceable, not the shadow fleets that are infamous out of Iran, not those type of vessels, but the regular maritime tracked vessels, we start to see a gap that's building from the situation that has occurred from the since that date, February 28th, when the United States began Operation Fury. So now that gap is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And although that lapse in coverage hasn't hit us directly, hasn't quite gotten to us yet, the market is anticipating it, right? And so we're preparing for the worst. We've done our analytics, and we know that there are going to be some major implications from the amount of material that is being effectively cut from us. Effectively, what we have missing in capacity is about 20 million barrels of oil per day, right? And so we do have there is a bypass from Saudi Arabia going east to west, and not to mention the Red Sea has its own problems with the Houthis in that region as well. So it's not like the Red Sea is a clear passing. And then at the same time, UAE has their bypass, which is about 1.5 million barrels via pipeline as well. So with those two pipelines, that covers about 6 million barrels. That still leaves us at about a 14 million barrel per day deficit that isn't going to be able to be recovered, right? There's just no way that any market can even handle that amount of capacity missing from the marketplace. Looking a little bit more granularly into how things are working in the Naphtha sectors and the olefins, and starting in the chemical side of things, um, we have to know that Asia's dependency on seaborne naphtha is about 80%. So that is a very high number for their dependency on seaborne naphtha. Europe still has that 50% steam crackers, all built, between 1970 and 1990. So a very aging structure in Europe that is very heavily dependent on that naphtha as well. So that's going to be about 50 steam crackers that are going to be fighting for some limited resources. And we've already heard about some rationalization that's being discussed at the moment. Uh, and what we have at risk is about 25 million tons of ethylene per year of that production that is going to have to find a way to reshuffle and to refigure out where they're going to get their feeds from. Now, even before the conflict started, there was about a 40% capacity risk in EU. So this is just going to add even more pressure to those aging assets, right? Key closures already have been ExxonMobil in Notre Dame. You got Versailles, Porto Marghera, Versailles, Brindisi, the two in Italy, actually three in Italy, and then Sabik Gilin. Those are all notable closures of good size in Downtown New Zealand as well. So closures are already started, and again, that pressure is only going to become more immensely as those feeds become more and more um, um, constrained. So now we talk about the positives, right? How North America, how the United States in particular, is going to have the advantage, right? And it goes back to my previous videos where we talk about the newer technology that the United States has, the light feeds that we have. And so the US is going to benefit tremendously from this conflict. WTI has already reached a very high number. I think it was about 106 last time I checked. And so the United States and the Permian Basin is going to benefit from this conflict. And they're going to start taking market share. That's what they're going to try to do. But we're also going to be missing a lot of petrochemicals in that portfolio as well, that we will not be able to cover. And so we're going to see a lot of markets starting to tighten up. And that's again where you can go into resource wise, and we have advanced coverage on your particular markets. So please be sure to look into that. So we tend to talk about worst case scenarios, right? And of course, because we really need to understand are, what's going to be our biggest headwinds that we're going to have to face in this conflict. And so in the article, I mentioned the DFC. That stands for the Development Finance Corporation. The longer term is the U.S. International Development Finance Corporation. Now, its original setup was during Trump's first presidency in 2019. And the objection of this branch of government was to start looking into developing nations, into less developed nations, into investing in infrastructure such as water, highways, railways, those type of things, and investing capital into those countries in order to help build their development. Now, during this conflict, Trump has announced that the DFC is going to take a position that it has never done before, right? Which is it's going to cover those risk premiums on wartime regions that it's never meant to do this, right? The DFC was not meant to perform this action. And in fact, because of the amount of cargo that goes through that strait, the amount of exposure could be grand, right? So looking into the chemical markets a little bit deeper, 2025 Middle Eastern exports for polyethylene were about 12.5 million tons per year. And for methanol was about 14 million tons. And for MEG was about 6.5 million tons. We have all that information in our platform under our trade statistics. So it's easy to find. Now, other products that are going to be affected is that Qatar supplies about 14% of global urea, and 20% of global LNG. So those are two major markets that are going to be hit pretty much right off the bat until those risk insurance premiums are issued. China's ethylene capacity is about 50 million tons, and again, it's going to be heavily dependent on oil imports. With a crude to chemicals concept, that's a specific need for crude imports. So that's going to be a major problem that China will be facing as well. So now we know the headwinds, right? We know what we are facing. Asymmetrical warfare has not been the United States' strong suit in its last two conflicts. The United States must do a good job in protecting the strait and preventing, mining in any particular region, because that will be detrimental to U.S. insurance for wartime marine insurance premiums. We've already had two vessels struck. The Prima, which was hit by a drone strike in the Persian Gulf, and the Louis P, which was a U.S. oil tanker that was hit in the strait as well. Both struck on March 7th. So which was yesterday for me. So those two strikes on carriers are going to be a major problem for shipping out of the strait. And so the United States has to be able to prevent that. That is going to be their number one objective in this conflict, because again, Iran's only strength in this conflict is the economical warfare that it has with the strait. So that ends our episode for today. I greatly appreciate everybody tuning in and watching in. Please reach out to me if you have any questions or have any comments that you would like to bring up. I am Steve Wilkerson, and again, this is Molecules to Market come to you every week. Thank you.